Chelsea might have one of the most frightening defensive groups in the Premier League next season. And I'm not just talking about one or two players. I'm talking about Maxence Lacroix, Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana, Uriel Hito, Marco Palestra, Pep Chevria, Reece James, Malo Gusto, and a group of talented young defenders still waiting for their opportunity. But here's where things get really interesting. Chelsea have already allowed Trevor Chalobah to leave Como, and now Tosin Alarabayo is being linked with a move to Benfica. So why are Chelsea getting rid of experienced defenders when Xabi Alonso is supposed to be building a stronger backline? Is this actually part of a bigger plan? Because when you look closely at what Alonso has been doing this summer, Chelsea's defense isn't simply getting deeper, it's being completely redesigned. And some of the players coming in could completely change how this team defends. For years, Chelsea have had a strange problem. They had plenty of defenders, but having plenty of defenders doesn't automatically mean you have a great defense. Injuries, inconsistency, and constant changes in personnel have made it difficult for Chelsea to establish a settled backline. Alonso seems determined to change that, and one of his biggest moves was bringing in Maxence Lacroix. Chelsea completed the signing of the French centre-back from Crystal Palace, giving him a long-term contract, and his profile tells us a lot about what Alonso wants. Lacroix has pace, he's powerful, he's strong in the air, and he's experienced enough to deal with the physical demands of the Premier League. But more importantly, he has the athleticism to defend large spaces, and that matters because Alonso doesn't want his defenders simply sitting deep and protecting the goalkeeper. He wants them aggressive, he wants them comfortable defending a high line, and he wants them capable of recovering quickly when an opponent breaks through. That's where Lacroix could become extremely important. But if Lacroix gives Chelsea power and recovery speed, Levi Colwill gives them something completely different. Composure, ball progression, and the ability to step forward from defense and help Chelsea control the game. That's incredibly important for Alonso. Because in his system, defenders aren't just defenders, they're part of the build-up. They have to move the ball forward, they have to understand when to step out, they have to know when to hold their position, and they have to be comfortable making decisions under pressure. That's why Colwill could become one of the most important players in this entire defensive rebuild. Then you add Uriel Hito to the picture and things become even more interesting. Hito can play centre-back or left-back, giving Alonso another defender who can change the shape of the team without necessarily making a substitution. That kind of flexibility is incredibly valuable, and we've already seen Alonso experimenting with different defensive structures during pre-season. Against AC Milan, Josie started with Marco Palestra, Josh Achampong, Wesley Fofana and Uriel Hito across the back four, and Chelsea went on to win 3-0. Palestra operated from the right, Hito played on the left, Fofana and Achampong protected the centre, and that game gave us another reason to pay attention to Palestra, because he's not simply another right back. He's a player who can operate as a fullback or wingback, and his pace and attacking ability could make him extremely useful in Alonso's system. Imagine Palestra pushing high on the right while 3 defenders remain behind him. Suddenly, he doesn't have to spend the entire game worrying about being exposed. He can attack, he can press, he can provide width, and he has the pace to recover when Chelsea lose the ball. That could be exactly what Alonso wants. And then Chelsea have added another fascinating piece on the opposite side, Pep Chevria. Reports have indicated that Chelsea have agreed a deal with Rayo Vallecano for the Spanish left-back, with the transfer moving toward completion. And tactically, Chevria could be very important, because if Palestra gives Alonso an aggressive option on the right, Chevria could provide something similar on the left. Now imagine Chelsea playing with 3 centre-backs behind them, Lacroix, Colwill, Fofana, Palestra flying forward on one side, Chevria providing width on the other. Suddenly you can see the structure. This isn't just a collection of talented defenders, there's a tactical idea behind it. But then we arrive at one of the biggest questions surrounding Chelsea's defense right now. Who actually starts? If Alonso chooses a back 4, there are several combinations he could use. Palestra, Lacroix, Colwill, Hito. But sitting on the bench could be Fofana, Reece James, Malo Gusto, and several young defenders who are more than capable of competing for minutes. That's ridiculous competition. But if Alonso decides to use a back three, the possibilities become even more interesting. You could imagine Lacroix, Colwill and Fofana forming the central defensive unit, with Balestra and Chavarria operating as aggressive wingbacks. And suddenly, Chelsea have a completely different team. The wingbacks can attack, the centre-backs can spread across the pitch, Colwill can help progress the ball, Lacroix can defend space, Fofana can use his athleticism, and Heitor can give Alonso another option depending on the opponent. That's the scary part. There isn't just one way for Chelsea to defend anymore. But before we start calling this the best defense in the Premier League, there's something we need to remember. Chelsea's defense isn't suddenly perfect. The Your Darul Tazim game was a reminder of that. Chelsea conceded 3 goals in a 3-3 draw, and there were moments where the defensive structure looked vulnerable. And that's important, because having good defenders isn't enough. They need chemistry. Lacroix is still settling into the team. Balestra is new. Chavarria is new. Heitor is still developing. Fofana's fitness needs to be managed. Colwill is still growing into his role. And Alonso is still experimenting with the best way to organize this defense. So the biggest question isn't whether Chelsea have enough talent. They clearly do. The question is whether Alonso can turn all this talent into a defensive machine. And maybe that's actually what we're watching right now. Chelsea aren't simply trying to buy more defenders, they're trying to find the right defenders. That's why Chalobah can leave, that's why Tosin could potentially leave, that's why Lacroix was brought in, that's why Balestra was signed, that's why Chavarria is being brought in, and that's why players like Jorel Hito and Achampong suddenly become so important. Alonso isn't simply asking who is the best defender, he's asking who fits the football I want to play. And that's a completely different question. So Chelsea could enter next season with a defensive group that looks completely different from what we've seen before. Lacroix, Colwill, Fofana, Jorel Hito, Balestra, Chavarria, James, Malo Gusto, and potentially several more young players waiting for their opportunity. On paper, that's scary. But football isn't played on paper. And Xabi Alonso now has one enormous job. He has to take all these talented pieces and build a defense that can survive the Premier League. Because if he gets that right, Chelsea may have just built something very special at the back. But if he gets it wrong, all that talent could still leave Chelsea with the exact same problems they had before. And that's what makes this defensive rebuild so fascinating. Because the question isn't whether Chelsea have the talent, they do. The question is whether Xabi Alonso can turn them into a defensive machine. So would you start Lacroix and Colwill together? Would you play a back three? And if Benfica actually make a serious offer, should Chelsea sell Tosin? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to follow Xabi Alonso's first season at Chelsea, subscribe to the channel, because this defensive rebuild is only getting started.